owner, along with my two kids, Nate and Keely Swift, of TJ Swift House. And today I would just like to hit some tips for helping you dealing with and supporting people with disabilities. And so this is what's called a diagnosis training. And it's not an official, this is the scientific, technical definitions, it's not anything like that. It's just about some of the things that I learned while supporting people in the group home and in ISLs. So I probably owned TJ Swift House, I'm guessing 15 years before I went to school and got my master's in counseling. And when I did that is when I learned about diagnoses. And so some of the things that I'm going to share today have that background, but really when it comes down to it, diagnoses describe behavior, but they were never meant to put people in a box and limit them. And so diagnoses explains why somebody does what somebody does, but it's not to limit the potential or their dreams or their goals or the quality of their life. So I just want to share first of all, cognitive disability. When someone has an IQ that's been put on them, then they'll give a frame of reference as to what their ability is or is not. But that has not been my experience. People with cognitive disabilities, through aging, through experience, through the environment that they are in, can learn all kinds of things, and in fact we're learning all the time. And one of the things about people with cognitive disability, if they learned behaviors that are not functional, that bring harm to themselves or bring harm to others, they can learn behaviors that are functional, that can bring help to themselves and bring help to others. So everybody can learn. There's always that learning curve for anybody, no matter what level, there's that possibility. And one thing that seems to happen regularly, and this is in my experience, is that you think that because somebody can communicate well, speaking sentences fluently, have a conversation, because they can talk, well, we think that they can receive or hear, comprehend well. And that's not always the case. Sometimes somebody can talk up a storm, but when you're talking to them, they're nodding and smiling because they understand English, but it's not processed and it's not comprehended. And so sometimes there's just like a bouncing off. And we think they talk well, so they comprehend well, but that's not necessarily the case. And let me give you an example of this. When you go to a doctor's office, he's speaking English, but when he's sharing things about the situation, the circumstances, using technical words, or just talking in a mainstream, when you leave that doctor's office, sometimes you go, what did he say? He spoke English and he was talking to me and I heard all the words, but I didn't process it or I didn't comprehend what he was saying. Well, that's the same when we support people with disabilities. There's a lot of nodding and smiling, and then it didn't go anywhere. So one of the best things that you can do is speak in short sentences and give little bits of information at a time, and then wait, and then you can add to that. But words themselves are can be, how about that, oppressive or controlling. And so the more somebody's talking at you, you can feel more and more frustrated and more, they're talking and talking. So know that a steady stream of words can sometimes cause pressure and sometimes cause behaviors. Another thing that happens is that someone who doesn't use words at all for communication or uses very short amount of words, then we think they can't understand us talking. And sometimes, this is the part I really dislike, someone will be sitting there who doesn't communicate with words and we're talking back and forth between each other like they don't understand anything we're saying. And that is not true. Somebody who cannot express with words can comprehend very well. They're receiving all the information. They're processing all the information. They're just not being able to, in return, speak in the same way or communicate the same way. And some of the embarrassing things that happen is they're sitting right there and we're talking about their toileting experience. We're talking about their behavioral experience. We're talking about them and they're understanding every word we say and we're not including them, which is as simple as sitting down at their level and looking at them and acknowledging that they're sitting there and making sure we're not causing pain or anger or discomfort while they're there. So the thing about cognitive disability, particularly with using words, it's so important that you're watching. You're looking to understand their facial expressions. You're looking to understand their body language. And you're getting to know them and how they communicate when they can't communicate with words. So that's just some tips about people with cognitive disability. The other, right along these lines that I learned through experience is working with people with autism. And I think it's pretty common knowledge that anybody with autism, change is very, very difficult and routine is very, very important. But also what I've learned is that transition is a big deal and also receiving communication is a big deal. Now just because a person has a diagnosis of autism does not mean that all people with a diagnosis of autism are alike. Everybody is a person and an individual with their own personality, their own preferences, their own likes and dislikes, so you cannot lump people together because they have the diagnosis of autism on their paper or on them. It's really, really helpful if they know what's coming up before it happens. For example, if you're supporting a person who has to catch the school bus in the morning and she's already, physically ready, got her backpack, she's ready to go out the door and the bus drives up and you go, school bus is here, let's go. That is like, put on the brakes, there's pressure to perform and that will almost always cause somebody to resist. They would do so much better if you would give heads up that in 5 minutes that bus should be pulling up the lane up to the door and we're going to be walking out the door together. They would do so much better if, remember, this is your friendly bus driver and we're going to get to ride the bus and it's 3 minutes and I can set off the alarm for you a minute before they get here so that you'll know. But this preparation of transition, that's a really, really big deal. Just letting people know what's coming. And then when you let somebody know what's coming, if you'll tell them what's next, that even brings more comfort, more security. And for someone who can actually do the whole day, if you tell them what the day's going to look like, that brings more comfort and more security. So transition is a big deal. It's actually a big deal for most people, not just people with autism. And then the second thing is communication. Not all people, but a lot of people with autism, when you're talking straight on and giving them eye contact, that's too much. That's too much visual, then audio, and then also processing. It's too much. So one of the things that I learned, not with everybody, but with some people, what I learned is if I crosstalk, it's easier for them to receive. So, for example, if there's a staff person in the room and you say, hey, did you remember that at 10 o'clock we have a doctor's appointment and we're going to be leaving out of here for Greg's doctor's appointment? Greg can receive that way easier than if I look straight on in his eyes to his face and talk to him directly and say, Greg, we're going to the doctor's appointment at 10 o'clock and you need to be ready. Pressure! So to ease that, it's better. If there's not a second staff person there that's working, it's still better if you say out loud, now I need to remember that at 10 o'clock today, we'll need to get his book and get the bag, and Greg will need to get ready, and then we'll need to go out the door probably 9:45 to get to Greg's doctor's appointment today. If I say that out loud, audibly, then no pressure on him. He's receiving the information. You're giving him the heads up. He knows what's coming, but you haven't hit him straight on. And I think you guys can relate to this. Like if you're in a classroom and there's 10 people and the teacher is talking to the class, you know, it's all good. But if the teacher singles you out and says your name and speaks directly to you, your heartbeat will start racing, my brain will start racing, and then I'm like, you know, I got to come up with the right answer. I got to do the right thing kind of thing. So that just brings ease with someone with autism. And then the last thing that I want to address on this video is that people with ADD and ADHD, attention deficit disorder, and attention deficit hyper disorder are two diagnoses where people can be extremely bright, extremely functional, very, very capable. But because this affects them, it limits their ability. For example, this person is healthy, arms, legs, brain, everything functions really, really well. They socialize really, really well. They can play games at a really high level and accomplish, you know, those levels that you do in games. But if you ask this person to clean their room, they shut down. And here's why. If the bed needs made and the shoes need picked up off the floor, and there's dirty clothes that need to go in the hamper, and there's things that need to be hung, when they look at the room, they go, where do I start? It just feels overwhelming. And pressure. There's pressure that comes with that. And so they can't necessarily communicate, I am feeling overwhelmed. It would sound ridiculous to say, I can't clean my room. So they say they won't clean their room, or they just don't clean their room, because it's just, where do you begin? But people with ADD and ADHD, if you will tackle things in little bits, like what amount of time can they actually stay focused on something that they don't want to do? Now, something that they want to do, they can stay focused for hours because there's that motivation. But if they don't want to do it, then what amount of time can we tackle this? So I'm going to call him George. So I know George pretty well by now, and I know that about 10 minutes we max out. So I say, hey George, I'm going to set the timer. And for 10 minutes, all we're going to do is get the stuff off the floor, and we're either going to put it in the dirty clothes hamper, or we're going to put the shoes in the closet. But just you and me, 10 minutes, we're going to work on this. See, it's down to bite size. It's to do, this is the goal. I can focus on the floor. I can get the stuff off the floor for the next 10 minutes, and this nice guy's going to help me. So you got that. Or you can also just say, let's say 10 minutes was too much. You could say, hey, you and me, next 5 minutes, let's just pull the covers up over the bed, put the pillows on, and make the bed. High five, we did it, yay, conquered the bed. We'll come back in a little bit and tackle the floor. Or we'll come back in a little bit and then I'll hang up the clothes. Or if they can do it, you know, with the timer, commit to 5 minutes by themselves, yay. But the main thing is that you don't get mad or frustrated because they seem very, very capable, and they are. But with ADD and ADHD, easily overwhelmed, easily overstimulated. And so even though their capability is there, their functionability is not there. And that's really important for you to know. So anyway, this is just some tidbits from Tracey, and I hope you enjoy your class. Thank you.